the young man at STEM school in Colorado. His service was today. Young folks with all kinds of life ahead of them. Unfortunately, lost their lives while saving those of their classmates. I mean, these school shootings are you know, things that were um, completely, the worst possible case scenario, you know, and we wouldn't hear of anything like that for years and years and years. And now it's like every couple of months, if that. There's something crazy going on. I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, uh, it breaks your heart on the one hand, on both hands. It breaks your heart, but then you become so equally. People begin to throw their hands up and like, what the heck is going on?
Well,
Where is this coming from?
well, there oftentimes there are warning signs that people are going to be engaged in this type of activity, and sometimes people don't get it. We had a show a couple weeks ago when we were talking about suicides,
Right.
and we were talking about teen suicides and some of the warning signs that are out there, and we also talked about the overall school safety perspective. And one of the things that we talked about was kind of threefold. It was sort of paying attention to your kids, talking to them, just making those observations using your senses. And then we
Right.
talked about the preparation aspect. And another thing too that's important, because we kind of alluded to the kids that are getting into trouble. They are doing certain things, and they're fighting and getting into other things. But there's also that aspect of community engagement, and I think we
Right.
talked a couple weeks ago. One of the things that and I spoke about the things we were doing in Prince George's. Now, I can tell you. One of the things that I don't know whether you know him. There's a guy in Prince George's that worked very closely with us. A guy named Phil Lee, and he was working very closely with the young people in the school system. So if a young person, very quickly, if a young person got into some difficulty that could get them arrested, um,
Hmm.
they had worked the system. We had worked the system out. We could funnel that case to Mr. Lee, with Judge Dawson's permission, and that parent and that child would have to come in every weekend and take classes and tutoring and mentoring and those types of things. And then, of course, for that kid, I know you're saying, well, what if the kid didn't want to come? That was no problem. Then he got the pleasure of explaining to the judge why he didn't want to go.
Hmm.
But those types of programs help to really identify those young people that could have gone down that road. I can't tell you, I don't know how many major incidents were avoided because of that type of intervention.
Hmm.
You can't even count that. Now, I can tell you statistically, we were one of the first jurisdictions to start decriminalizing a lot of school things, but in the state of Maryland, that is. But,
Hmm.
you know, when you look at these things from a holistic perspective, you have to have a couple of things. You have to have a good safety program. You have to pay attention to the kids. You have to have your wraparound services, but you also have to have that community involvement. And
Hmm.
and I'm not necessarily sure that is always the case in a lot of these jurisdictions. And I'm not trying to kick people in the teeth while they're down, but you obviously every jurisdiction in America knows how to do the run, hide, and fight thing and go in with the guns blazing, and that's appropriate. Those
Right.
types of things you absolutely have to be prepared for. But there's so many other things that can be done on the front end that can help
Hmm.
identify, problem kids, or identify, just from that kid, just kind of slouching around and just looking so depressed, and you happen to grab him or her that day, you may have prevented a child from taking his life that day.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
I mean, just from you saying, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And those are the types of things that were going on there. And
Right.
those are the type of things that I'd like to see happen throughout the country because they work.
Right. Right. Well, it's no way you can really. You're right. The first step is to kind of engage, with communities and with folks and find out what's going on and who has their finger on the pulse, and and you're right. There are signs that are missed because people are so busy doing whatever it is that they're doing. And you've got everybody's doing 5 million things.
Yep.
And you've got meanwhile you got these kids slipping through the cracks. And I don't know. I mean, I gotta say, I'm trying not to. There are a lot of similarities in some of the kids that I'm seeing. And when you see them on TV, you're like, well, hell, somebody should have seen something.
Well,
you would think. When you just look at them, you're like, oh, this. But there's you can't. You obviously can't do that. But it's like, it's just I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why it's. There's always a similar kind of well, no, not always, because you got what was the thing at the STEM school? The guy was straight A student, and it's going across intellectual lines and all of this stuff now. So I don't know. It's just you're right though. I mean, unless you have to set out, because normally what we set out to do as a community, as anytime, even when things have been really terrible in the country, when people turn their attention to it, the country had the ability to kind of change some things, at least, to some degree. I mean, there are certain things that still exist. The racism problem is going to be with us beyond my lifetime.
Sure.
I think people tried to have this, this belief that there was something called post-racism. Like, no, there is no post-racial. Nothing. Just because you elect one president in yeah. They can hear me clicking. You can hear it clicking?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Oh, you good. You good.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of things to overcome, but you've got to start somewhere. But, you look across the nation, you look everywhere. Speaking, of craziness, what the hell is going on in Alabama?
Oh, Lord. You know what?
You act like you're surprised.
You know what?
Come on.
You know what? That's,
come on.
Wait a minute. Before we get to Alabama, I just have to say this.
We need to give it. There's a right name there. The part about Alabama that's really is Bama. We need to have like a Bama of the week, right?
Yeah.
And if we start this week, Alabama gets the Bama of the week prize.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about that. But let me also invite our callers to give us a call at 702-425-7789, 702-425-7789, or you can chat with us live. We'd love to hear from you. And, this whole Alabama thing,
Why are you surprised? Why are you guys surprised? I don't get it. Why are you surprised?
Well, I don't know if it's that I'm surprised, is that it's, because it's Alabama and, don't go back to another, and I'm sorry for my folks from Alabama. I know there's a lot of good people from Alabama, but
it is what it is. Come on, man.
And the 60s kind of did you all in. It just that no one can get past that.
Right.
Who's not from there, who's not around. And I've been to Alabama, and I've, as they say, some of my best friends are from Alabama. No,
oh boy,
are Alabamians. But for me, it was just like, yo, what is this all about? I mean, there's certain when I was going to move down south, my mother, who was originally from Rochester, New York, Baltimore was down south to her.
Yeah, it is.
When they moved. So when I told her I was going to North Carolina, she was like, what? That was really down south. Now to her, she lumped North Carolina in with Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. It was all the same to her.
Yep.
And she was like, I don't know if you should go there. Now this is in 2007.
That was last week.
She's telling me, I don't think you want to go down there. And I only point that out. Obviously, it's not as bad, but the politics is a little crazy.
Yep.
But the point is that in her mind, it was just as bad as and Alabama. So when she got here, she said, well, man, Alabama is like, when you go back, you don't have to turn your watch back when you go there. You got to turn your calendar back. About 50 years. Who at the and he got
The little squirrel looking guy. What's his name?
the Attorney General in
Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, just I mean, come on, Sessions.
The little Keebler elf.
Yeah, little elf guy, and then the one
Look like a little Keebler elf with no hat.
and the one that lost the election. Yeah, come on, man.
Well, but here this even Pat Robertson, the hyper right wing evangelist, said they'd gone too far.
Well,
even he said that. Now I would hate to say that I was ever going to agree with Pat Robertson, but
okay, this one time.
I lost that bet.
This one time,
right? He said they've gone too far. But then I just found it. They've got a woman governor, and she signed the thing.
Yeah, she's just like him. She came from the same camp.
She signed the thing. She made it sound like she was going to. Oh my God! But she had to come from somebody. I guess she felt like she. I mean, it's ridiculous. And granted, I think they know, they pretty well know that it's not going to fly. Certainly they want to push the issue. But I mean, when we were in the legislature, we would talk. What makes it scary when we were in the legislature, we would say a good, an idea. It takes about, a good idea takes about 3 or 4 sessions before it actually, becomes a law. So the first time you put it in, and people are like, polar opposites. Some people can't stand it. Some people love it. But the shock value is done. It's been put out there. Then the next time it comes to session, you go in the next year, and then you hear it again, and then people have streamlined it a little bit. So it's not quite as bad, but it's overall pretty much the same thing. And it meets a little less resistance, but it still doesn't pass. And then the next year, it's peeled back a little bit more. Other things are happening in people's lives. Nobody's really paying attention. By the time you get to the 4th year, this law not so bad. Boom. And it's a law. And you're like, how did that go through? And this thing here came right through. So they clearly want to fast track it to the Supreme Court. And that's the frightening part. For me, the whole idea of a Trump presidency was scary enough, but what I was really concerned about is what had happened, like with the Kavanaugh situation, and it was about the vacancies that could potentially come up on the Supreme Court.
Well,
because of these kind of things.
Well, now you can sue Apple stores now, right? You can sue Apple stores, right?
You're changing the subject again.
No, he's saying no, because it was his concern regarding the Supreme Court and all that stuff.
I know,
and that's what is being tossed around now. It's like, wait a minute, this is scary. Okay, you all let that pass.
Yeah, and people don't, and people just kind of ignore. They're not used to. You gotta, politics has a strategy and a gamesmanship to it too, and the folks on the right have played their game well.
And that's
very well.
And that's the thing I want to talk about when we get back from the break, because when you brought up this whole gentrification thing, and you talk about the Supreme Court, and then you just look at how the White House is fighting every effort by the House to investigate this thing. I just want to talk to you when we get back from the break about, do you think the Democrats have been caught flat-footed? So when we get back, I'd be interested to hear what you think about that Thin Bad and Miss Susan, and I think that this is going to be a subject that's going to be chasing us around for many years, it appears, at least for the next 2 years. So when we get back, let's hear about whether you think the Democrats have been caught flat-footed by all this stuff that's going on. We'll be right back.
All right.
You're listening to Straight No Chaser. We'll be right back.
What do you wish for?